In all the clamour, the fuss, noise, fear, bias, hyperbole and spin around the use of artificial intelligence, there's something I've not been hearing. What does it mean to do a coaching qualification in the age of AI? Hello, and welcome to this podcast from Management Futures. I'm Hugh Reynolds, Head of Learner Experience and Engagement, and today I'll be joined on the podcast by my friend and colleague Pippa Gough. Pippa is a coach, qualifications supervisor and a consultant, and together with the team at MF, we support people to gain professional qualifications in coaching. You'll hear us refer to our learners as candidates rather than students. They do a lot of study. They read, they listen, and they write about coaching, but the focus is very much on practice. These are active practitioners of coaching who build up a portfolio of evidence and reflection around the coaching that they do as part of our programmes. Now, to be clear, Pippa and I are definitely not tech gurus. We're quite new to AI ourselves, but we do know a good many things about how to successfully gain a qualification. So come, join us in this exploration of the brave new world of tech-assisted coach skills development. Hello, Pippa. Thanks so much for coming to talk to me today.
Well, it's lovely to talk to you, Hugh.
It's a bit odd for me today because usually I'm the person at MF that comes and does the interviewing, and today the roles are reversed a bit, and you're going to interview me about AI. So thanks for doing that. I'm a little bit nervous.
I get to ask the questions. Great.
We have already established that I'm not AI generated or any kind of deep fake. So we've already had a conversation to establish that, you know, I'm a real same old Hugh that I normally am, and you're the same old Pippa. So thank you for holding this human conversation about AI, and ask away, ask whatever.
So I suppose the first question, Hugh, is why are we having this conversation about AI? Because it's certainly cropping up a lot. So what is it we're aiming to do?
So I guess for me, AI is in the air. It's in the national global conversation. It's in conversation in our industry, and lots of coaches are talking about it. Lots of people are coming out with coaching apps or discussing whether it means the end of human coaching or how we augment it and use it to augment our own practice and things like this. So I feel there's already a conversation going on for coaches about AI, but maybe not a conversation for coaches in training, and particularly coaches who are working on our programs. And you're a supervisor on our ILM diploma and certificate programs. So yeah, you work with learners, and I guess I'd love to support those learners to use AI judiciously, and also to maybe discuss some of the ambiguity around it. You know, some of the do's, some of the don'ts, some of the yes, you can definitely do that when you're working to secure an ILM qualification, and no, you definitely shouldn't be doing that, and talking about that grey area in the middle, perhaps.
Yes, it is unclear, and as you say, it is a grey bit in the middle. So generally, what do you think are the sort of the bare bones guidance that we should be giving?
So I think for me, standing by what you're writing. So I better just sort of suggest to people what's required within the ILM to get your certificate. And we don't call them essays anymore. We call them units, units for submission. And one of those is a report, and the other two are more like portfolios of evidence. And you're very familiar with these, supporting your learners to generate this evidence. And I guess a principle for me is, would you stand by that evidence, and would you point to every line in the evidence that you've generated, or the reports that you've worked on? Would you stand by every line and say, yes, that's me, that's what I thought, and this is what I'm thinking, this is what I reflected? Could you actually do that for every bit of what you're submitting in your work? But I guess there's also something that's deeper than that, something about being a professional. So when we come and do an ILM program and gain an ILM qualification, it's a professional accreditation, it's a professional recognition of our work as ethical coaches, as people that are seeking employment as a coach or as a coach within another role. And perhaps before we look at the do's and don'ts of submitting work and writing, might be worth having a chat about um, what we want to be seen to be doing as coaches and professionals. So I've been thinking about some of the MF principles, these characteristics that we like to inhabit and like to show to each other. And I've picked out three. So one is about openness, another is honesty, and another is challenge. And may I ask a little question, Pippa? I can't help myself, but what
Go for
for
it.
you as a coach, what does openness and honesty suggest you should be doing as a coach?
Well, in the context of AI and submission, that I reference if I'm going to use something which is I've done some research on and I found a nugget or an idea or something which is helpful, that I'm very clear in my referencing of it. Um, but also, I think, and for me, this is what I advise with the candidates who are doing their qualification. And that is because one of the assignments is this report. So you're going to go in and provide um, some coaching for
Hmm.
senior or exec level. That I say to them, have an organization in your head, either one you're in or one you've worked in, or a sort of amalgam of those two. But everything that you then say and you're asked to write about, you apply it to that organization, which of
Mm,
course AI won't be doing. It isn't
mm,
just a pure theoretical dumping of
yeah.
information, which is what you can get from AI. And AI may inform it. So for me, I think AI is fabulous as a resource,
Hmm.
but it is a resource. It isn't instead of
Yeah,
the insightfulness, the thoughtfulness, the being able to apply some of these theoretical ideas to the practical situation that we're asking them to be in, which is advising an organization.
sure. So we're using it as a tool, and it's not undermining our honesty by,
Yeah.
so the example you gave is a brilliant one where some people write about their own organization, others write about a hypothetical one,
Yeah.
or perhaps one that they've previously worked in. The AI hasn't worked in that environment,
No.
and it's quite, compared to other subjects that might be being assessed, this one's quite difficult to get AI to write, and yet um, the consequences of bringing in AI to help you on that description of your situation
Yes.
and how you would promote coaching within that situation. The consequences are quite severe. So ILM have published a statement on AI that's essentially saying, um, don't do it, and um, please be very mindful whatever you're writing down not to use AI to paraphrase or to rewrite anything that you've
Mm.
done. So that's quite clear. And there's also a more positive message that I guess we can come back to in a few minutes in our conversation around how to be doing it. But on this openness and honesty issue, you have to have had the experience yourself. You have to have had
Yeah.
those reflections.
Yeah.
So, is it around your work, Pippa? What kinds of conversations are you having around AI? Have you had many yet, or is it just emerging as a topic with?
Oh, yes. And I mean,
Yeah.
I can spot where people are using AI because some
Mm,
people will reference,
hmm.
well, they will pursue the reference from AI through
Yes.
to the reference. And
Yeah.
quite often there is a conversation around the correct formatting for
Yes.
references if you
Hmm.
actually have taken them off the web, which is all perfectly legit.
Yeah.
And just to add, slightly, sort of off on a tangent, that we've always had access to other people's ideas and thoughts
Yes.
when producing academic pieces of
Hmm.
work. The difference here is that it's easily cut, pasted, and formatted for us, that you can just lift it in and drop it in without ever
Yeah.
passing it sort of from your hand that's controlling the mouse through your brain
Yes.
and then back onto the page again, that
Yeah,
there
so
has to be a,
it's got to wire through your brain
yes,
somehow. And
yes,
I'm checking myself now because I nodded when you said, well, that's fine to check the references and to get references and quotes and things like
yes,
that. And I'd say, yes, it is a good use. You're using it as a tool in the same way that you might use a search engine or use an old-fashioned library index or
yes,
speak to a colleague about
yes,
references that they use or books they suggest.
yes,
One thing to be mindful of is that the large language models that underpin these AI chat facilities, they're actually just finding connections between patterns
yes,
in massive archives and massive data
yes,
sets. And so I would I would urge anybody who's enjoying the rapidity with which they can generate these references that they must then go and check those references are
oh
real
yes,
and not
yes,
hallucinations. And it's a great way to sort of expand your thinking around, okay, what in this area that I want to get better in, what could I be exploring?
yeah,
So it's a great opener of those things. I I wouldn't rely on it uh, to be the final word on what those references are or what the ISBN numbers are or what
yeah,
the publisher is and things like this
yes,
if you want to reference in that way. But certainly as a tool to generate them, I'd say I I used to use this word validation. Kind of if I think of something or I've got a reference, can I then go and check it in AI? And I've stopped doing that.
mm,
I've largely stopped doing that because um, it's more about having a conversation to check my understanding around something rather than a particular fact or a particular thing that I want to check, which I could go and check and get a proper source from through
yes.
Google or whatever other search engine I choose to use. But it's a different tool that I might wield in my researches.
I mean, the metaphor is that it's a tool, and you
Mm,
can use that tool in a number of different ways and apply it in different ways to get a different result. And what we're
yes.
saying with the honesty and openness bit is that we would have an assumption of them as professional people wanting to pursue a qualification, which at the end of the day is about practicing professionally and
Yes.
ethically as a coach, that runs through their
Yeah.
whole approach to the process of then learning more about coaching and having their practice assessed.
Absolutely. I think you put it so well there, Pippa. And it reminds me, and it is difficult, but we say this thing about don't let the tail of the qualification wag the coaching dog. Because coach
I use that phrase of yours all the time,
Oh,
Hugh.
great. So um, that that coaching dog is the big thing that we need to be, and
Yeah.
we mustn't stop being coaches or stop being honest, open professionals when we're completing our professional development work or submitting work for this accredited qualification. So yeah, I think sort of being true to yourself as a coach. May I also offer another quality, one of these MF sort of things
Yes.
that we say we're friendly, open, honest, challenging, and brave. And it's the challenging one that interests me as well,
Mm,
because I've realized just using things like Copilot, ChatGPT, that I'm not really challenged when I interact with an AI. It
mm,
sort of massages my ego. It tells me how brilliant I am. It comes straight back with another thing that it's going to do for me or it's offering to
mm,
do for me.
mm,
And I wonder about the nature of the challenge that I'm getting when I'm using it.
mm,
Is it is it too easy? And what am I missing out by not thinking through these things? It's given me a load
mm,
of stuff and it looks great, but as you're saying, it's not passing through my brain. I'm not reflecting on it in a sort of
mm.
way that is developing my thinking and my understanding, perhaps.
And I think, I mean, there are two things there. One is that if we, as coaches, recognize that there is something called an AI coach who is asking a range of questions that are non-directive, and
Hmm.
people individually may find that helpful,
Mm.
then uh, there may not be the challenge. There may be an attempt at rapport building, but it is an echo chamber, really, without
Yeah.
any challenge. But then there's something else with the people that we are accredited to
Hmm.
enable them to reach a qualification. And that is that for me, I will challenge them
Mm.
in terms of how they
Yes.
produce material. And I hope in
Yeah.
that way I'm guiding them in terms of what my expectations and assumptions are in what I think is probably appropriate
Yes.
ways of meeting assessment criteria and learning outcomes.
Yeah.
So that use of AI is fine as a resource and a tool, but you have to be able to apply that to the situation that you're in. And that
Yeah.
also applies to any of the assignments, any of the units, as you
Hmm.
said at the start, that
Hmm.
the two units that aren't the sort of report for an organization, but are evidence of coaching and evidence of your own development as a coach,
Mm.
that requires a lot more reflection in the application of some of the theoretical understandings that they've had, or feedback that they've had, or behaviors that they've changed, or whatever. They're not going to get any of that from AI,
Mm.
you know.
Mm.
And if someone produced an AI paragraph in response to one of those bits, I would be going back and saying, where's the reflection?
Yeah. Yeah. And what I love is that even if you didn't realize that that paragraph was generated by AI, you're
Yes,
still in dialogue with your candidate, with the
yes,
learners doing these qualifications. So it reminds me of like a PhD thesis, and you write it, and then you have a viva where you're interrogated on
yes.
aspects of it, and really going down into, well, did you really write this? Are you able to articulate the ideas expressed in this? So having those conversations and being in dialogue between learner and supervisor is
Yes.
really helping, because it's giving that challenge that we might not get elsewhere. And I'm fascinated by, knowing you as a great coach and the challenge that you give to your coaching
Mm,
clients who aren't doing qualification, and how similar and similarly useful that can be with learners, who are open. And we do encourage everybody to be open about what tools they're using.
yes.
And then we can have this sort of conversation around, okay, that's fine. Yeah, let's try this a different way, because we're running a risk here that we're going to be called out, and you're going to be called out for claiming your work as claiming somebody else's work as your own, or these kind of contract copying sort of systems where you pay somebody else to do the essay. These are things that are checked. These are
Mm.
things, and whether that's a human or an AI, that these things can be flagged up. So it's a really important thing to be mindful of through the process. But also, we
Mm.
don't want people to be scared of using it, but to have this
We
kind of
don't want to
open
drive
conversation
use
about it.
underground.
Exactly,
It's
exactly.
actually out in
Yeah,
the open, but there are ways of which they can apply this to their thinking.
absolutely.
But in your own work, because I know, Hugh, you're doing a PhD at the moment,
Hmm.
how much do you think AI has assisted you? You've talked about how it might actually block you from some of the
Yeah.
critical thinking, but how much do you use it and how helpful is it?
So I've been doing my PhD for a long time because I've been very, very part-time.
Mm.
And I think when I started my PhD, it was sort of AI wasn't a thing for the public to be using in the way that we're using it now. Lately, I have been using it, and it's more for referencing styles. So, my favorite one, or the one that I'm encouraged to use, is the American Psychological Association. And I
Mm.
think they, on a frequent basis, they update their style. So I might have started off in the fifth edition of that
All
style,
right.
and now it's the seventh edition. So it's a very, very technical thing that, um, yeah, or it could be something like finding stuff within my thesis that I've forgotten that I wrote, right? So
Mm.
searching stuff I've already
Mm.
written. Another way that I've not used so much, but I know other people are using, is when they think they know something, how might they challenge themselves on that by saying, "Is it like this?" Or "I feel this," or "I've read about about this. What do you, AI, think, or what do others in this area think?" Or is that consistent with the way that such and such an author might write? So
Yes.
that kind of having somebody to talk through your thesis with, which believe me, when you've been working on something like a PhD thesis, which not many other people are interested in, having an AI friend to who sounds like they're interested and doesn't give you too much challenge, you you can ask for that challenge, but you've got to be really good about how you're prompting the artificial intelligence to come back to you.
Yeah.
So I've got friends who are really into AI and to the extent of creating personal assistants that have certain characteristics and know them and know the sorts of things that they like. I'm not like that, but I can see why it would be very helpful to have a friend or an ally, even if that's an artificial friend, with you along the journey. So
Yeah.
little things that you just want to check, but it's not the final word. It's not the be all and end all.
Mm.
Um, Personally, what I put into AI, I'm quite careful of. So I do things like every week will be deleting my history,
Yes.
because I don't want next week's um, prompts and things that I'm asking next week to be informed by this week's.
Yes.
Now that's just a personal thing, but
Mm.
it's something that many of these AIs are set up to capture information from you. And I think it's good to know that you're still in charge of that information and responsible for that information. How's it going so far? Just a quick reminder that you're listening to a podcast from Management Futures. We're together with top ILM supervisor Pippa Gough, and we're in the midst of an important conversation for our digital age. For coaches in training, is AI a friend or a foe?
If you are going to come up with, some original grounded theory or whatever as a result of, in fact, you don't want that harvested in part by an AI engine.
Hmm.
You actually want it to be produced original and
Yeah.
fresh when you publish it.
Yes, and
Yeah.
I do because I care about my words, and I know you're an author as well, Pippa, and
Mm.
you love writing and being creative, and I know because we've had many conversations about books and things that for you words are really precious, words are really
Mm.
special, and they are for me, and I wouldn't want somebody else, like colleagues or friends, to be thinking, no, this isn't Hugh. Hugh's just got AI to do that. Now,
Mm.
that's because of my traditionalist background and academic background and things like that. Other people, other places where people will be working, don't have that sort of hang up. So
Yes.
I'm trying to, as I'm talking about my love of words and how seriously I take words, I'm trying to be open to the future, really, as we should be at Management Futures,
Mm.
in where are we going to be applying ourselves and our human coaching techniques in environments which are really open to AI and wouldn't bat an eyelid about AI doing all sorts of things like analyzing our conversation and packaging it up. Another thing we've not mentioned, because that is a possibility if you've had a coaching conversation to record and then turn it into a transcript or get AI or
Mm.
Zoom
Mm.
and various
Mm.
applications to give you a summary of that conversation. And this is another aspect for coaches of data protection. And does your client
Yes.
know that that's happening? How do you feel about that
Mm.
data going elsewhere?
Mm.
There may be useful things to do when you're training and developing towards a qualification, in that um, that might be really helpful if I was your candidate, Pippa, and we were having a conversation and you allowed me to do that for our developmental conversations or
Yes.
supervision conversations. That might really help me capture what was included, and then
Yes.
I could use that as a tool and pick out the bits and put the bits through my head that I choose,
Mm.
and I stay in control of that information,
Mm.
even though I've used AI to summarize our conversation, and that might end up in my final submission of units, but it's crucially gone through my head, even
Yes.
though I might have sped up bits of the process.
Yeah. I have offered uh, doing supervision or sometimes doing a coaching session when Zoom, which I use particularly, started offering AI summaries and things and saying, do you want this as an AI summary? And most people said yes.
Mhm.
And then I would have to make sure I was sending it to their own
Mm.
personal inbox and not an organizational inbox.
Yes.
But some of
Yeah.
the summaries were I thought, were quite good and
Hmm.
would be quite helpful, and particularly with supervision sessions and feedback on recordings,
Mm.
because that gives a lot of sort of reminders and useful information when they come to provide evidence. Was, oh yes, that was one of the things that I wanted to try out in this session, and
Hmm.
I've stopped offering it because I just felt like you slightly hesitant about the harvesting of
Mm.
what was a fairly, what is a confidential
Yes.
discussion of a third party, which is anonymized, and all of that. And I just suddenly thought, no, this, even
Yeah.
though we know that Zoom and all of these platforms harvest information anyway, but somehow it seemed to me that just having it all written down and recorded and on AI just was another step away
Yes.
from that. So, yeah, slightly hesitant about that.
Yeah, and I think there'll be others who aren't so hesitant, and I think as long as everybody involved understands what's going on, and by that I mean coaching clients as well and supervisor, and that might be something I can also think of people in our network who might have needs around that. So there might be neurodivergence,
Yes.
dyslexia, th things
Yeah.
like this, where this could be a real, uh, a really enabling tool.
Mm.
And there are those sort of warnings or flags around it that just tell us to proceed with caution.
And I
One,
suppose that's part of the contracting, isn't it? I can offer you
yes,
this in terms of recording. If you wanted, we can, or in terms of an AI summary or
yeah,
transcript or whatever. And I can, organize that and send that to you as soon as we finish. But you must know that, we contracted for a confidential. I can't guarantee the confidentiality, although it would probably
yes,
be anonymous in terms of the way this information would then be used. So
yeah.
it's just part of making sure the contract is surfaced what might be some of the issues around it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love how you keep circling back round to key coaching skills and key aspects of the coaching process as well, Pippa, with contracting, which of course we want to focus on and
Yes.
attend to and
Yeah.
do properly as coaches.
Yeah.
And this complexifies it a little bit. And although I don't have sort of guidance on whether to do that and when to do it, I would say to people perhaps check in with organizations if there's an organization involved and it's not just a one-to-one relationship in that
Yes.
coaching
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah.
Check that other policies are being adhered to
Yes.
if using these tools, but be yeah be open to a discussion around it, I'd say, around
And
that.
that then is also carried into the supervision and assessment in terms of the qualification, because we are doing that in our own private coaching,
Mm,
as it
mm,
were, but also it's what we need to be rehearsing when people are
yes.
answering questions around contracting or whatever, and
Yep.
we are observing recordings and looking out for
Hmm.
how the contracting process, that there is now this other dimension which needs
Mm,
to be discussed in terms of anonymity,
yes.
confidentiality, who has access to what. So that also needs to be, I suppose that the term squeaky clean came into my
Yes.
mind. We need to actually have that on the table, don't we?
Yes.
It's not
Yeah.
just about, oh, this is a confidential confidential discussion and nothing goes beyond.
Yes.
This is a safe space. You can say to me what you want, type of thing,
Hmm.
because actually, it may not be
Hmm.
that watertight.
Yeah.
It
So
isn't just
surfacing it, I
squeaky.
think, like, however clean it is, surfacing it and discussing it and getting agreement from the
Yes,
stakeholders involved around it sounds a
yes,
really good idea.
yes.
A few things that I picked out. One, and I think we've touched on this, is understanding the limit of AI. So it can lull us into thinking that it can do everything. And some people take a hard line in that these aren't facts. They're not facts in the same way that we would go
Mm,
and look up a peer-reviewed paper or speak to a trusted trusted colleague who's already authentic and got authentic qualifications. Um, Certainly, you know, we're using it, but I'd just return to go and check. Don't rely on it as the final word
Mm,
if you're using your
mm,
AI chat. Um, checking can be helpful using it, and certainly as a starting place. But again, don't end with that fact check. So it might be that you go and find other resources that you can then map out to,
mm,
and go and read up and
mm,
read that yourself if you can. So don't allow the AI to be doing that reading for you
mm,
or doing that assurance for you. I think in philosophy we sometimes talk about epistemic responsibility, so being responsible for the knowledge that you have and the way that that knowledge is used.
mm,
And this is going to a formal document for assessment. It's sort of a mark of you as a professional and who you are and your working practices. So yeah, as I said earlier in the conversation, stand by it, I think. There's a lot of you find all sorts of things online and within AI around
mm,
prompting. I love this word, promptographer. We've all got to be promptographers where we come up with the best prompts. And something I find interesting there when you're prompting an AI to help you is the iterative process of you might start off quite generally, but then it gets more specific.
mm,
So you are having that dialogue with the AI rather than just a one-stop, oh yeah, ask it a question, it gives you an answer
yeah.
back. What can we get? What can we learn through that kind of conversation? So I'm very interested by the use of AI for revision, for example. If
Mm,
you're taking an exam, and how it could generate questions that you might get, or questions that you might want to respond to, and challenge yourself. And this is
mm.
perhaps a way that we can encourage AI to be more challenging of us, but it's still not challenging in the same way that you might be in conversation.
Sometimes the people who are absolute beginners at coaching and they've done the Management Futures ICS course, the Intensive Coaching Skills course, which is amazingly practical, and they've
Hmm.
practiced that. And then when they start to do the qualification and they submit, say, after a couple of months or whatever, a recording, a first coaching
Hmm.
session, which they've recorded and sent off for me to
Yeah.
observe and assess and feedback on. That, uh, particularly with coaches who aren't very experienced, I will be asking them to look at how they use more open questions, to be more
Mm.
succinct in that
Hmm.
questioning, to use the client's own words, and to be non-directive, the standard sort of coaching
Mm.
approach. And I'm thinking that AI may be very useful in terms of helping to tutor and to help them rehearse
Mm.
some of those
Sure.
questions. So what worked, it's almost like you have an AI client, say,
Hmm.
or you are the AI's client. What
Mm.
questions really got you thinking, and what was that form of words? And I
Yeah.
often say, to people, particularly who are struggling I mean, a lot of organizational problems that people bring to coaching are relational, you
Hmm.
know, and people that they think of, if you ask them, well, who, are there any role models, any people in your organization you really admire in terms of what they're managing to achieve?
Mm.
And then say, well, what forms of words do they use?
Hmm.
And can you, like a magpie, sort of listen in and say that's a really
Yes.
useful form of words? And I think you could
Hmm.
use AI as that as well. why
Mm.
why did that question prompt me to be more thoughtful? And I'll use that worked for me, and I'll use that in my next coaching session. So it's about helping them to fashion and to formulate and to see and understand what a really good coaching
Mm.
question is.
And can I just clarify, Pippa, are you suggesting that the AI's role in that is to sort of give case studies or to be certain people or to, if I ask this question of um, to somebody of this seniority in an organization and in this industry, what sort of things might come back or what language might they be using? Was that the kind of
Well,
thing on your mind?
yeah, so well, it might be that. It
Hmm.
was just sort of thinking out loud, really. Hadn't really formulated
Mm,
my thoughts particularly, other than I'm just thinking about the sorts of things I often pick up in my assessment, and I'm
mhm,
giving feedback about succinctness, summarizing more frequently, interrupting, raising
mm.
challenge, and really getting those questions perfected at
Yeah.
high level. So, in fact, you could use those questions that you found worked really well. You can
Mhm,
use that in any context because it's not
mm,
a specific question. It's a high level. How do you
mhm.
feel?
Yeah.
What impact did that have on you? Those sorts of things. You can put that in
Yeah.
anywhere, really.
Yeah, and I'm excited by that prospect of having an effectively free source of feedback on if I was going to have the conversation in this way, or I wanted
Mm.
to generate new questions for myself or test out, what might be the impact of asking the question in this way?
Yes,
How else might I ask this
yes,
question? Generate me 20 different ways of asking this same
yes,
question,
yes.
or how might this land with particular? So I think as a sand pit, a sandbox sort of is where, where
Yes,
where we're playing
yes,
around
yes.
with and rehearsing. I talked to our Simon, our Simon. Well, he is our Simon. He's our colleague, Simon Eastwood, about models that he uses within leadership skills training, and
Yes.
we talk a lot about rehearsing beforehand the difficult conversation that you might want
Mm,
to
mm,
have, and
mm.
considering the stages of that conversation and the manner in which you're going to hold it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm excited by that idea of having a free way of trying that out. I'm
Yeah.
also cautious of putting too much stay into it, in the same way that when you mentioned earlier feedback that learners might get on their conversations. Um, I was discussing that this morning with our colleague Sue Parr, fellow
Mm,
supervisor on our
mm,
LM programs, where um, she'd had experience of working with somebody who gets the figures back, how many negative words versus positive words, and
mm.
it gives advice. So it's like a public speaking coach. Now, I
Yes.
don't know which application
Yes.
she and
Yes.
her contact were talking about, but I imagine that it wasn't fine-tuned to the
Mm.
particular way that that person or Sue or you or me might want to coach. It
Yes.
might be fine-tuned to help somebody become a more empowered leader,
Yes.
which isn't necessarily the best way to be a coach. And it's certainly not the best way to be you as coach. So it's giving you alternatives, it's giving you perspectives in the same
Mm.
way that if I came to you for supervision, Pippa, you'd give me another perspective or help me find a different perspective. But it's certainly not where I'd want to stop in that process of
No, I think
preparation or
it's. I
development.
think there are a number of. I would want to. In fact, I will go away after this and experiment with, an AI saying, "Ask me a really good coaching question," and see
Mm,
what they come back with, and then if I try to answer it, so where might you go to now with a coaching question? And I mean,
yeah.
as you say, there are lots of apps and platforms you can use that offer free coaching that people
Yeah.
can get into really quite prolonged
Oh,
relationships
yes.
with an
Yeah.
AI coach, and I found it really helpful.
Yeah.
It isn't just an echo chamber, it is actually helping them to think through, because we have to believe, this is your next coaching principle coming up, that the client is resourceful. So if
Yes.
you're asked the right questions, it's going to help
Yes.
you unlock,
Yeah.
some of your thinking. And can AI do that?
The client is resourceful and the client has resources like AI. I
Yes.
think that's where I get excited, is less so in, oh, we can build a coaching app that can replace human coaching and do it
Mm,
in the same kind of way. Yes, we can build a coaching app that then is accessible by all sorts of people who wouldn't
mm,
otherwise experience coaching. At the same time, if that then denies people the experience of having better conversations with fellow humans, that isn't quite such a positive spin on the prospect of having coaching AI apps. Although there is a place, there's a massive market for them, there's massive use of them around, and they help in all sorts of ways. I think what interests me and excites me even more than that is when I'm having a human coaching conversation, talking to my conversational partner about what apps they use and why they find those helpful. If they're using AI, they've got some wearable technology that's giving them feedback. How is that influencing who they are and the decisions they're taking and the way they're feeling? And the reason that I'm more interested in what my clients' apps are rather than using
Yes.
apps myself
Yes.
is that that's meeting them where they are. That's meeting them where they are with their own apps and what's working for them. It's not suggesting to them, oh, use this app and everything will be fine. I've not got that expertise, but they've already got apps in their lives that possibly need some of that challenge that you're presenting, possibly need some of
Oh,
the
yes.
discussion around.
There's a very well used app in nursing in the NHS. It was
Mm,
developed during the pandemic by a group called Shiny Minds.
mm,
And the Shiny Minds app is, for nurses, helping them in terms of um, exercise, breathing, of how to cope in moments of extreme stress, whatever. They've got this app in their pocket,
mm,
and they can, they tailor it to their own
mm,
needs and things, and it organizes, meditation, like
mm-hmm.
some of the meditation apps things. It's got all of that on, and it's had really big take up.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fascinating. And is it something that, I mean, has it come up? I know you've got a nursing background, and so you may have come across this in roles that aren't coaching. But has anybody brought an app like that into coaching with you or into supervision with you? Has anybody brought their own
No,
app with them yet?
no, and I've never, to be honest, Hugh, no one's volunteered the information, but I've
Mm,
never actually pursued it
mm,
actively either.
mm. I'm
Uh,
just interested in the
yeah,
where it's coming from,
yes.
like where that technology sits, who's owning it, who's controlling it,
Mm,
and who's suggesting it, on whose
mm,
agenda is it working,
mm,
is something that fascinates me.
mm.
Yeah,
Well, we can certainly at another time talk about the Shiny Minds app for nurses.
absolutely.
I can tell you more about it.
Thank you, and thanks so much for chatting to me about this area and this emerging area. And I think we've certainly started a conversation around it, and I'm sure many of our learners and associates will find it helpful to hear our thoughts on it. And we're really open for more thought
Mm,
around this and around usage cases of AI and around how people integrate it into their own practice. And I guess as a final word, I'd just say to anybody who's concerned about it or intrigued or curious about using it, to bring that up in discussion with supervisors and bring
mm,
it to us, because we're up for that discussion and making it work efficiently, effectively, safely, and within the bounds of the law and the rules that we've got to follow in
yes.
order to help people to successful conclusion to their qualifications. Which I think is that's been a great thing for me today, is starting that conversation and thinking some things through.
Well, it's certainly been discursive. We pulled out on many bits of string there, Hugh, in the conversation. But thank you very much. Interesting. And there are a number of things I'm now going to go away and test out. I'm going to get into that sandpit. So
Thank you, Pippa. I'm going to get out my knitting needles, weave or knit those. Well, learn to knit first, and then knit the ends of those threads together.
yes, yes,
Take care, Pippa.
yes. Lovely to see you.
Thanks so much for joining our chat today. We hope you've been able to take away some suggestions and tips for using AI whilst doing a coaching qualification. Some things to help, and some things to steer well clear of. And if you've not yet started a coaching qualification, Pippa, myself, and the team would love to help you with that. You can get all the lowdown on what we offer at managementfutures.co.uk. That's managementfutures.co.uk. Just look out for the section on professional qualifications. Thanks again so much to Pippa for making this podcast happen, and thanks to you for lending us your ears.